Hello dear learners, welcome to this SWAYAM NPTEL online course on inclusive education. I am Dr. Umakant Prasad, an assistant professor from Department of Education, Vinay Bhavan, Vishwabharati Shanti Niketan. This is week 3 and today we are going to lecture number 12, that is special, integrated and inclusive education. During this lecture, we will cover the concept related to special, integrated and inclusive education, prospects and consequences of special education, meaning of integrated education, educational implications of integrated education, components of inclusive education, and at the last, difference among special, integrated and inclusive education. Let us discuss about special education. Segregation or special education involves placing children with disabilities in special schools or separate classes away from their non-disabled peers. It refers to a special educational approach designed to meet specific learning needs arising from various disability that do not benefit from general education. This involves providing tailored instruction, adaptive equipment and materials, and supportive services to ensure that students with disabilities can access the curriculum and achieve their full potential. It aims to bridge the gap between their abilities and the demand of traditional education, fostering academic success, social integration, and the development of essential life skills. Rather than segregating disabled students, modern special education emphasizes inclusion, striving to educate them alongside their non-disabled peers in the least restrictive environment, while providing the necessary support to make that inclusion meaningful and effective. Historically, segregation was the dominant model for educating children with disabilities. However, educational philosophy and legal frameworks in many countries, including India, especially with the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act 2016, promoting inclusive education. This is a move away from the model towards more inclusive practices, recognizing the significant social, emotional and academic benefits of learning alongside diverse peers. According to Anita Julka, traditional approaches to educating children with disabilities often reinforce exclusion and promote a deficit-based view of disability. This means children are seen mainly in terms of what they lack, rather than what they can achieve. Such views limit their opportunity to learn and grow alongside their peers in an inclusive setting. Anita Julka emphasizes that these practices hinder the development of both academic and life skills by isolating children from regular school environments, thereby denying them the benefits of shared learning and social integration. There are some prospects and consequences of segregated education. As far as prospects of segregated or special education is concerned, we know that special education is the tailored support system that meet the learning needs of children with disabilities. This is the specially designed instruction where the support services, curriculum, teacher training, everything has been designed as per their needs. In special education, early identification and intervention is used and individualized educational program is prepared for each and every child with disabilities. But as far as consequences of special education is concerned, there is limited growth in a special educational setting for children with disabilities, as they have lack of opportunity to interact with non-disabled peers. During this setting, they are getting inadequate training because the scope is limited for them. They are generally given the specific type of training that is mainly concentrated with the issues and concerns of a specific type of disability. So, they do not have the opportunity to explore and interact with others and for their all round personality development. Segregated setting also promotes social isolation because children with disabilities do not have opportunity to interact with non-disabled peers. So, they are not getting opportunity to go to mainstream education system where they have opportunity to interact with diverse learning needs students. There is a limited exposure in a special education system and it also hinders independence, because we know that after getting education, ultimately children with disabilities has to move to the society and they have to live in mainstream society where there is no compartment for a specific type of disability. So, finally, they have to live in the inclusive world where they have to learn to do the things independently, but during the special educational setting they do not have opportunity to interact, they do not have opportunity to develop their self to be independent. As far as integrated education is concerned, integration refers to placing children with disabilities into mainstream schools. However, it often occurs without making necessary changes to teaching strategies, classroom structures or curricula. As a result, children are physically present in regular classrooms, but are not fully included in the learning process. This approach assumes that child must adapt to the existing system rather than the system adapting to meet the diverse learning needs of all the students. It often results in limited participation in actual learning process. In such settings, children may not receive the academic support what they require, and teachers frequently lack the necessary training or awareness to address the diverse learning needs of children with disabilities. This can lead to marginalization within the classroom, where students are expected to adjust rather than being actively supported. Without appropriate support and accommodations, integration fails to ensure meaningful participation or learning outcomes for children with disabilities. This means physical placement. The primary action in integration is the relocation of students with disabilities from special schools or special classroom into general educational settings. They are physically in the mainstream school system. Lack of systematic change. Crucially, the system itself, such as teaching methods, classroom organization, curriculum content, assessment, largely remains unchanged. The expectation is often that the child must adapt to the existing system. Limited participation, because the system does not fundamentally change, the child's actual participation in learning and social activities may be very limited even they are not physically present. So, there are many challenges in educational integration. The first one is physical placement. As we discussed earlier, that integration allows the children with disabilities to get education in general education system. So, this is one type of physical placement. This is not sufficient for meeting the learning needs of children with disabilities. As far as class structure is concerned, the classroom structure has been designed as for the learning needs of non-disabled children. So, these classrooms needs to be modified as for the need of diverse learners. In general schools, generally teachers are not given inclusive orientation. They are not especially prepared for tackling or dealing the issues concerned and challenges of children with disabilities. So, special education provides all the facilities and is able to meeting the learning needs of children with disabilities, but integration during the general education system is not able to fulfilling the learning needs of all the learners, especially children with disabilities. So, systemic change is required, change in curriculum, change in content, teaching approaches, strategies, and that can meet the learning needs of children with disabilities. Meaningful participation is the biggest challenge during the integrated education system, because the system is not designed as for the learning needs of children with disabilities, and the system does not want to change itself, but it expects the child will change as for the need of the system. So, these are the challenges, and without resolving these challenges, the meaningful integration of children with disabilities in general education system cannot be possible. Let us discuss educational implications of integrated education. The first educational implication is children are physically present, but not academically supported. This is the core failing of integration. A student might be sitting in general classroom, but if the instruction is not adapted to the learning style or needs, they will not truly learn. They become observers rather than active learners. The reality of integration is that children with disabilities are physically present in mainstream classrooms, but often lack of academic support, tailored instruction, and inclusive strategies which needed to ensure meaningful learning and participation. Teachers may lack training or awareness to address diverse learning needs of children with disabilities. General education teachers without adequate training, resources or support may not know how to effectively teach students with disabilities and students with a wide range of disabilities. This is not a fault of the teacher, but the fault of a system. It leads to marginalization within the classroom, where students adjust rather than being supported. Despite being in mainstream setting, students with disabilities can still experience a form of isolation or alienation. They might be ignored, struggle in silence, or be seen as a special child rather than a fully integrated member of the class. The burden of the adaptation is placed solely on the child, which is often an impossible expectation. Integrated education means persons with disabilities of all ages and or those learners identified with special educational needs are being placed in regular education setting with some adaptations and resources. There is, however, the expectation that persons with disabilities and or special needs children must fit into the pre-existing structures, attitude, and an unchanged environment that already exists in the school. We can also understand the educational implication of integration by this slide. As we earlier discussed, there is a lack of academic support during the integrated education system. Here students are physically present, but not supported. Integrated education also faces lack of teacher training to deal the issues, concerns and challenges of inclusive education and for dealing children with disabilities. It also faces classroom marginalization because this is based on partial inclusion. This is not the full inclusion. In integrated education system, teachers have lack of skills for diverse needs and students need to adjust themselves and the system does not want to make changes in itself. Inclusive education is the most appropriate means to dealing the issues, concerns and challenges of children with disabilities and diverse learners. About 11% of children with disabilities between the age 5 to 18 years were enrolled in special schools in the urban areas as compared to less than only 1% in the rural areas as per NSSO data 2002. This clearly indicates that the presence of special schools in a parallel stream does not affect the enrollment of children with disabilities in regular schools. The National Curriculum Framework for School Education 2000 brought out by NCERT recommended inclusive schools for all without a specific reference to people with special educational needs as a way of providing quality education to all the learners including children with disabilities. According to National Curriculum Framework for School Education, segregation or isolation is good neither for learners with disabilities nor for general learners without disabilities. Societal requirement is that learners with special needs should be educated along with other learners in inclusive schools, which are cost effective and have sound pedagogical practices. Though in India there is no formal or official definition of inclusion, it does not only mean the placement of students with special educational needs in regular classrooms. The draft scheme on inclusive education prepared by Ministry of Human Resource and Development 2003 uses the following definition of inclusive education. According to this, inclusive education means all learners, young people with or without disabilities being able to learn together in ordinary preschool provisions, schools and community educational setting with appropriate network of support services. To create a truly inclusive environment, it is essential to recognize the diverse educational needs of all children, especially those who are marginalized, discriminated against or excluded. Barriers may exist both within schools and in the wider community and family settings. Inclusion involves reforming classroom practices, school structures and community relationships to make education accessible and meaningful for everyone. It is about building a strong and cooperative partnership between schools and communities to foster shared responsibility and collective progress. In India, the Government of India launched the Integrated Education for Disabled Children program in 1974, and this was the first formal step towards inclusion. In fact, even as early as in 1966, the Kothari Commission has highlighted the importance of educating children with disabilities in regular schools. The Salamanca Statement and Framework for Action, UNESCO 1994 on special needs education has been identified as the international breakthrough for inclusion leading to a paradigm shift in education. Inclusion in education is based on the belief that every child can learn and realize her full potential if provided equal opportunity to participate in school, supported with resources required as for her condition and taught in a manner appropriate to her needs. Ideally, a child must receive education in an environment that is the least restrictive and is most conducive to his or her needs. This means that general education is the placement of first choice for all, wherein a child with disability is with his or her peers without disability to the maximum degree possible. Such an education is called inclusive education. It is the most effective and equitable of the various models of education for the overall growth and development of all children in both curricular and co-curricular domains. Children studying in an inclusive school develop confidence and imbibe values of sharing and participation. Thus, inclusion is a basic human right and not a privilege. After going through the discussion on inclusive education, now we can discuss about the components of inclusive education. The first component of inclusive education is inclusive pedagogy, that is teaching strategies, teaching methods that value the diversity. Universal design for learning is the most important component of inclusive education as well, because it creates accessible learning environment for all the learners, those with children with disabilities. Flexible assessment is also important during the inclusive educational setup, because inclusive education demands educational reforms, and that is mainly related to examination reforms. So, every individual should give an opportunity to demonstrate their knowledge and skills, and it can be only possible through examination reforms. Curriculum adaptation is also important during the inclusive educational setting, because this can able to meet the learning needs of all the diverse learners. Assistive technology is also required during the inclusive educational setup, because assistive technology help the children with disabilities and all the diverse learners to work independently and to meet their educational and other needs. Peer support is also required during the inclusive educational setup, because with the help of peer support, the all round development of all the learners can take place and they can develop their full potential. Thus, inclusion means designing educational system in a way that all children, regardless of their abilities, backgrounds or challenges, learn together in the same classroom with equal opportunities for participation and learning. Unlike integration, which focuses only on physical placement, inclusion emphasizes systematic change in teaching methods, classrooms, organization, curriculum design and school culture to ensure that every child can thrive. It values diversity as a strength and promotes collaboration, mutual respect and shared responsibility among all the students and teachers. Inclusive education ensures that no child is left behind and that learning environments are flexible, accessible and supportive for everyone. So, after going through the discussion on inclusive education, now we can say that inclusive education consider education system as a problem, not the child as a problem, while integration consider child as a problem and not the system as a problem. So, inclusive education consider the system as a problem. It means the system needs to be modified as per the need of the children with disabilities and all the diverse learners, because the system is not supportive in terms of teacher attitude. Sometimes the teachers might have negative attitude that hinder the inclusive practices. and if the system will not be supportive, the high dropout rates can be seen. The system, if not supportive, the inaccessible environment can be created when the children with disabilities can face the many barriers. Inclusive education believes in parental involvement, because by involvement of parents, inclusive education can meet the learning needs of all the diverse learner, because the parents are the most important source for gathering the information about the child. While there is no parental involvement during the integrated education system. Lack of resources is also one of the limitation of integrated education system, because due to lack of resources, the system will not prepare to truly welcome the children with disability and support them. Rigid curriculum is also the one of the most important barrier that needs to be taken care during the inclusive educational setup. Training quality is also important, because in integrated setting the teachers have lack of training for dealing the diverse needs of all the diverse learners. However, in inclusive educational system, the teachers have the appropriate training opportunities to deal the issues, concerns and challenges of children with disabilities and all the diverse learners. By going through this slide, we can easily understand the difference among integrated, special and inclusive education. While special education is concerned, it is based on the exclusion, that is separation, and here there is no interaction between special education and general education system, whereas integration is a part of general education system, where special classes are being arranged for meeting the learning needs of children with disabilities. So, this is the part of general education system, but inclusion considered that the children with disabilities are the valuable member of mainstream education system. So, inclusion believes that they are the integral part of the system and they can contribute to the society, contribute for the nation, for the development of the nation. So, during inclusion we can say that education for children with disability is the integral part of general education system. With the help of this slide, we can compare special, integrated and inclusive education on the basis of different points. On the basis of setting, we can say that special education based on segregated setting, whereas integrated education is based on partial mainstreaming and inclusion is based on full mainstreaming. As far as curriculum is concerned, special education consider a specialized curriculum, whereas integration believes in dual placement, whereas inclusive education believes in universal design learning for all. Special education focuses on remedial classes, however, integrated education focus on fitting in, and integrated education seeks that children with disability will change in himself or herself as per the need of the system, while inclusive education believe in sense of belongingness that support, value and respect the diversity needs of all the learners. As far as peer interaction is concerned, special education has very limited scope for peer interaction, but in integrated education there are some scope for peer interaction, and inclusive education has the full scope for peer interaction. As far as support is concerned, there is a separate mechanism for supporting special children under the special education system. However, integrated education believes in dual support. It can get support from special education as well as from general education. However, inclusive education is concerned, inclusive education provides support within the classroom like non-disabled children. So, every requirement, every needs of children with disabilities are being met during the classroom. So, as far as the general education is concerned, special education is apart from, isolated from general education system, but integrated education will be considered as a part of general education system, while inclusive education will be considered integral part of general education system. In conclusion, we can say special, integrated and inclusive education represent three different approaches to educating children with disabilities. Special education involves teaching these children in separate schools or classes, often using simplified curricula and specialized methods, but isolating them from their peers. Integrated education places children with disabilities in regular schools, yet without significant changes to teaching strategies or classroom environments, leaving them to adapt on their own, often with minimal support. In contrast, inclusive education promotes the full participation of all children in the same classroom by adapting teaching practices, curricula and school structure to meet diverse needs. It views diversity as a strength and focuses on removing barriers to learning so that every child can succeed together. There are some references here. Thank you.